Our outer pre-trip. Now we'll get in here and I'll start with my air checks. To do that, I'm going to do a safety start. Checking my mirrors to make sure they're adjusted for me. My transmission's in neutral. My brakes are applied. I'll start my vehicle. To be able to get these air checks started, I need to build my air to full capacity. I'll hold some RPMs on it to make sure it builds a little faster. Okay, my needle has stabilized. I'm at full air capacity, so I'll start my air checks. I'll be doing 5 air checks, all done on my primary air gauge. My first air check will be my compressor cut in. My compressor should cut in no less than 100 psi. To do that, I'll use my service brake, allowing air out of the system, and I'll pause in between to allow my needle to settle. Waiting for my needle to settle. My needle has settled. At approximately 105, my needle has started to rise, making this a successful test. My next air check will be my compressor cut out. My compressor should cut out no more than 130. Again, I'll use my accelerator, bring the RPMs up, help build the air a little faster. Okay, my needle has settled at approximately 126 psi, making this a successful test. My next air check will be my applied leakage test. To do that, I'll put my transmission in low gear, release both brake valves, key off, back on because I have electric gauges. I'll allow my needle to settle. During this test, I'll be making sure I lose no more than 4 psi in 60 seconds, or 1 minute, whichever you prefer. For a combination vehicle, boom. My needle has settled. Now I'll apply steady, firm pressure to the service brake. I'll allow again for my needle to settle. My needle has settled at approximately 103 psi. I'll start my timer now. Again, during this test, I'm making sure I lose no more than 4 psi in 60 seconds, 1 minute, for a combination vehicle. Mr. Examiner, are you bored yet?
I'm docking you over here. Make sure you're doing it right.
You failed! Oh, we're not doing the dock yet.
Oh.
No docking.
No docking yet.
I want a parallel.
What did they have Karen do when she did her test? Parallel or dock?
Dock. That's been 1 minute. Our gauge now reads 103 still, making this a successful test. I did not lose any PSI. Okay, my next air check will be my low air warning light and buzzer. My light and buzzer must come on between 55 and 75. I'll use my service brake to allow air out of the system, pausing in between to allow my needle to settle. for my needle to settle. My needle has settled. Waiting for my needle to settle. My needle has settled. Waiting for my needle to settle. My needle has settled. 72 at approximately 72 psi, my light and buzzer came on, making this a successful test. My final air check will be my spring brake pop out. Both valves should pop out between 20 and 45. To do that, again, I'll use my service brake, allowing air out of the system, pausing in between to allow my needle to settle. Waiting for my needle to settle. My needle has settled. Waiting for my needle to settle. My needle has settled. Waiting for my needle to settle. My needle has settled. Waiting for my needle to settle. My needle has settled. Waiting for my needle to settle. My needle has settled. Waiting for my needle to settle. My needle has settled. Waiting for my needle to settle. My needle has settled. Waiting for my needle to settle. My needle has settled. 30 psi. At approximately 30 psi, both valves popped out, making this a successful test. That concludes my air checks. From here, we'll start the end cap. To do that, I'll do another safe start. I'm checking my mirrors to make sure they're adjusted for me, free of obstructions. My transmission is in neutral. Brakes are applied. I'll start my vehicle. My ABS light came on. And went off, verifying that my ABS system is working properly. I'll start with checking my seat belt. Make sure that there's no cuts, no frays. Locking mechanism works properly. Securely bolted to both places down here and up here with bolts. Checking my mirror brackets, same as we did the outside. Checking the mirrors itself to make sure there's no cracks, they're not missing, they're clean, no illegal stickers. Windshield, same as we did outside. My wipers, make sure there's no missing parts. The rubber is not excessively worn or missing. They're working properly, as well as the washer fluid, as they are. Down here is my heater and my defroster. Make sure both are working properly, as they are. I should have no more than 2 inches wheel, 2 inches play, and a 20-inch wheel. Should not be sticky. You're welcome, Karen. Big boy horn, little boy horn. My left flanker, right flanker, high beams, and four-ways, all working properly. My water temperature gauge should be steadily rising. Normal operating temperature is between 160 and 200. Oil pressure steadily rising. Normal operating pressure should be 20 to 60. Tachometer, speedometer, both working properly. So my voltmeter should be between 12 and 14 so that it's charging my battery. Primary and secondary air gauge steadily rising to no more than 130 and it's working properly. Down here is my fire extinguisher, side box, 3 reflective triangles and spare fuses that we discussed outside. I would check the same. That concludes my end cap. My next test will be my 3-way brake check. To do that, I'll make sure my air is at full capacity. My air is now at full capacity. I'll start by checking my tractor brake. Make sure that it holds my truck and trailer in place. I'll put my transmission in low gear, gently let my clutch up until I feel it pull. And it's held my truck and trailer in place, making this a successful test. Next, I will check my trailer air supplies. Make sure it holds my truck and trailer in place in the same fashion. Transmission still in low gear. I'll gently let my clutch out. And it's held my truck and trailer in place, making this successful. My final brake check, I'll release both brakes, pull up forward no more than 5 miles an hour. Should bring my truck and trailer to a smooth stop, not pulling left or right. As it has, making this a successful test. Therefore, I just finished my outside pre-trip, air checks, inside pre-trip, and tug tests. May I do my skills now?